It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, I'm back at Dot Security, and this time I have the pleasure to talk with Jeff Miller. And Jeff Miller is the CFO at Impact Networking. Impact Networking, ever-evolving company, and obviously a CFO position is a pretty important position. So me and Jeff are going to have a conversation about what it takes to be a CFO in our ever-changing industry as we migrate into these different deliverables. And Jeff, it's always great talking with you. And I want to start out because we were in Puerto Vallarta at the company meeting, and you were actually made a partner at that meeting.
Yeah, it was.
So I want to say congratulations on that, because
that
was a lot of people at that meeting. I don't even know if I told you that yet, but congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You know, Jeff, let's just start out a little bit, tell the audience a little bit about your tenure with Impact.
Yeah.
Where did you start, and we're up to today? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I started here shortly out of college about 10 years ago, and before I came to Impact, I was actually looking at a company called Fresenius Kabi, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's a large pharmaceutical company out of Germany. They're about $30 billion in the United States, so I had the opportunity to be a part of their financial rotational program. And while I was going through that program, I actually was reached out to by my predecessor, the previous CFO, about an opportunity at Impact. And for me, it was just really a fact-finding mission, trying to figure out, okay, who is Impact, what's going on? At the time, I think they were around 70 million, working on a nice acquisition to get closer to 100 million. And it was an opportunity for me to meet that leader there. And I actually had to sit down with Frank, with our previous CFO, and a couple other the key leaders. And I found that culture there was really compelling. It was an awesome opportunity for me to go from maybe a much larger company to a smaller company with a more profound opportunity to make an impact. And no pun intended.
Yeah.
It was a really, really hard decision for me too, because you go from, do you want some certainty and stability, or do you want to be a part of an organization that has high ambitions and high growth opportunity?
Well, there is no certainty anywhere,
right?
Number one. And if you would have stayed at that 30 billion company, you would have been a spoke on a really, really big wheel.
Absolutely.
And now you're part of the sprocket. So I think that's a great testament to you and what you've accomplished. And, you know, being the CFO of this company has to have its challenges. So let's just jump into that. You know, we have a lot of, economic uncertainties, global problems all over the world. Sure. You know, what are you seeing as a CFO of a $210 million, basically independently owned company? What are some of the challenges that you're faced with today?
From my perspective, and it's a lot of me working with the sales leaders in the organization and also hearing from our clients, it's just lack of commitment. People are afraid based on the tariff situation that happened at the beginning of the year. We've got a brand new bill coming in place that just got recently signed from the administration, which there's some really positive things from business owners' standpoints, but it creates a lot of uncertainty. And so what we're seeing is our customers and our prospects are a little gun shy when it comes to, do you want to sign up for an agreement like ours, right? We're looking at long-term 3 to 5 year contracts, and for customers, it's something that they really have to weigh in on. And so for us, from my perspective, when I see that, now I have to talk about, how do we make sure that we preserve our cash? How do we make sure that we preserve our resources, and how do we make sure that we allocate those properly while we go through those types of scenarios? So it's been a tough journey for the first part of the year.
Well, I would say that nothing's ever easy, and that's why it takes the skill. But it's interesting to me, and I'm sure the audience picked up on this, but I interviewed your CEO, Mike Lepper, and I talked to Frank DeGeorge yesterday, and all three of you started in your 20s, basically for this thing, and it's pretty exciting stuff to see the evolution of the company. Last time we talked, about a year ago, I brought up the conversation around the managed IT services business. Sure. And, I know that a lot of our friends are trying to dabble in that, or trying to get into it and be professionals. That is what I'm really hoping they're doing, other than dabbling. But what are some of the challenges that you're having in that transition? And we really focused a year ago on the fact that a lot of times we use the wrong human capital for the wrong job. And actually, me and Mike had brought that up too, so it was kind of interesting. But how are you at with that? Or are you guys able to really get a fine-tuned management on that now with software? And because before it was you were still kind of in that process of making sure that didn't happen.
Absolutely. So, that's a great point that you bring up. And I think any MSP going through the opportunity to build something is going to run into these problems. And you hit the nail on the head here. It's finding the right resource to do the right job. We get a lot of tickets coming in on a day-to-day basis from our clientele, and it's anywhere from server network down and we need full reconstruction of their systems to, hey, I can't log into my account, I forgot my password, I need to reset it. And so for us, it was really defining how to properly manage those tickets coming in and get it to the right resource quickly. I think that's a key component there. And what we talked about at the beginning of this year when we were looking at it from an artificial intelligence standpoint was how do we remove that gatekeeping methodology of a ticket comes in and then I have somebody manually going in to figure out who it should be. We put some really nice parameters in place and some data in place that allows us to take a ticket in. It reads the ticket and it allows us to then categorize it properly, put it into the right urgency sector to allow us to get it to the right person faster. And we're taking that type of gatekeeping methodology and bridging it over with a new structure of our entire service delivery model to allow us to get the right person in front of that right ticket quickly. That kicked off middle of April, so we're really starting to see the fruits of that labor now, and we're really excited about the opportunity to continue to be more efficient along that way.
Well, I think a lot of folks, if you look at the print business, I mean, I've been in it for almost 40 years, but realistically, they would always use a burden rate, which I never liked a burden rate because I think it was way too ambiguous, number one, and half the time didn't even make any damn sense, and we didn't raise it for years. And, a lot of the, IT, I guess if they're really serious as a consultant, they'll suggest that they actually use the W-2 number of the person on the ticket.
Sure.
So how do you guys do that? Do you use a burden rate or use the real costs? Because the disparity in serviceability or these individuals is so much. You got a guy making $180,000 versus a guy making 80 or 60. You can't be using the same burden rate.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And what we struggle with early on is you try to use a flat rate, but then it's like, I don't have that engineer at that cost rate here. I have to use the more expensive, the $150,000, $160,000 resource. And like, what do? Not service the client? Or no, I have to do it. And then I have to adjust and make sure that my agreement gross profit is where it needs to be. So we struggled with that early on. We used a flat rate. We're actually switching over to a new tool for our PSA. It's called Halo PSA that is going to allow us to align true labor cost to the individual, to the service ticket and support. So to your point, we'll have really, really good metrics and information on, hey, this ticket was done by this individual. We're making this much revenue or this much profit on the ticket based on the actual cost of the employee. And it's going to empower our service delivery leaders to understand the true profitability of each of their clients, their tickets, and ultimately the agreements that they sold to the client.
Yeah, you're out there selling an agreement and you're like, holy crap, I didn't know we were going to spend this much to do it. And it is a big mistake. And I think as we see the print channel, and they've been, actually migrating to IT for like a decade now. But, as they go into that, when you think about the print service footprint, it really, they're spending about 46% of their time that you could track against a ticket to and from. And in IT, you can't do that. No. It's impossible to do that. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. That's awesome. So what are some of the other challenges that you're facing and I really want to kind of stick in the transition, but you also have a lot of other deliverables. So it's not just managed IT, it's managed cybersecurity. You got the marketing program going on and digital transformation and AI. So, how are you adjusting to help those individual business units be profitable on their own?
We're taking a lot of the things that we learned from IT since 2015 until now and leveraging some of those things that we've learned along the way to incorporate into those new processes and those new services. To your point, right? We've got IT, but we've also have cybersecurity, which has been a really great offshoot and very profitable for us. And then you've got our digital transformation group, which is really heavily involved in process improvement, automation, AI, artificial intelligence, and some of the things along that factor. And then we have marketing. So what we've done and what I do with the financial team is we incorporate finance business partners into each of those groups to allow them to really live and breathe those types of service deliverables and align with them on understanding profitability, understanding employee utilization, understanding billable utilization, because I think we talked about it even last time, we don't sell products per se anymore, right? They're a little bit of an offshoot. We've got some solutions, we've got some hardware that goes along with the deal, but our bread and butter is we sell our people and our expertise and our time. So as long as that's managed properly, you can make sure that your financials are strong toward the bottom line.
Well, the worst thing you could do is take your bucket load of print profit and start dumping it into these other diversifications and not paying attention to the other diversifications. You end up with a big damn mess. So
absolutely, but some of it too, when you think about it, you need some of that nest egg from print first to get started. But it's all about managing your margins. As long as you're getting the right gross profit margin, your operating cost, it ultimately comes down to a math problem.
Well, sometimes it's in the math, or it's always in the math, right? Numbers don't lie, they're unemotional. Yeah. So you have a financial executive, if you will, in each one of these individual groups.
Sure.
That's pretty awesome. So then they're not always coming to your desk trying to figure out how you're going to help them lower a price to an end user. They're going to do that with a financial person.
I'll give you an example. Ryan Gary is one of our finance managers at Impact, and he lives inside of the executive team with the IT group. He's on their daily stand-ups. He's meeting with, our Ray Santoro. He's our leader of the consultant side. He's meeting with Patrick Layden, the leader of MIT, to talk through business problems, pricing structures, client issues, pricing problems. And what we found is it's really been helpful to them to have somebody like that leaning on them on a day-to-day basis to make sure that they're making fiscally responsible deals.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of folks, and it's a bad habit in the print space, we always decided what the cost was because the market told us to the end user. And in the reality of it is, you got to start with what your cost is and make sure that you're going to get your margin, regardless of what the marketplace is. And if there's a difference in that, you better go to the market with a big differentiator. And I think that's probably been Impact's biggest success. I mean,
absolutely.
You guys are selling your intellect, you're selling fee-based assessments, and how is the fee-based assessment stuff going for you guys?
It's been good, and one of the things that's exciting, although we've had a slow start to the year from an overall sales performance standpoint, due to some of the changes that I'm sure you and Mike had talked about yesterday, we have about 31, 32 active in-work assessments right now, which is arguably one of the biggest bottlenecks we've had at any point in time in Impact's history. So, like I said, we've got 31 in the works. Our average assessment size being $20,000 to $30,000 each. There's a lot of opportunity out there for us over the next 3 to 6 months. So I'm really excited about the second half of the year.
Well, the other thing I was telling, Mike, is that when, because you're selling fee-based assessments, because you matured in the ability to move way upstream in those assessments, even though the customers are holding back, you're still getting them to pay for the damn assessment. So you're collecting revenue where a lot of folks aren't because they refuse to even sell the assessment.
Absolutely.
Which I think is just nuts.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Is there anything that's challenging that you didn't see coming since the new leadership took over? When Frank Kuko was here, Frank Kuko's in that office, everybody knew it. We got new leadership. We got a lot of young leadership in there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But what changed for you that was like, wow, I didn't see that coming?
Yeah, it was so interesting going from the dynamic of, Frank was the leader, right? He was always the person you go to and able to talk with and work on. And now with him by the wayside, moving on to the board of directors and being able to essentially run the business from a different capacity, having Mike Lepper, having Anthony Kuko on board from different leadership positions has been a little bit of a breath of fresh air, right? Now we've got 3 individuals that are very level-minded. We all have different experiences within the organization, and it's allowed us to think about things from a lot of different lenses before decisions are made. Knock on wood, we've had some really good conversation and dialect when it comes to making decisions, but we've always been on the same page thus far. So it's been good. It's been really, really good to be a part of that executive leadership team as we continue to move on to the next phase of Impact.
I think what's so exciting about it is you all have been together for so long. I mean, you're working with Mike and Frank and Patrick. It's been there for so long. It's hard to find that kind of tenure as senior leadership at the age that you all are.
Right.
I mean, we could see it in organizations where everybody's like 65, and it's like, okay, that's not going to work out. How do you go to the future if everybody's from the past? So
Sure.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So what's the greatest accomplishment you've had in the last 6 months?
That's a tough one. Really it's been just strengthening our primary banking relationship. We recently switched to a new banking provider, and it's allowed us to continue to grow in the way that we want to grow through these uncertain times. And so I would say that's been one of our biggest accomplishments, myself personally, but for the organization over the last 6 months.
As a CFO of a $210 million company, basically you're in the managed services space, technology, selling technology to SMB, enterprise accounts. Do you get any outside input? I mean, how do you
Absolutely.
continue your knowledge in just being a CFO of a 200?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm always looking for additional career development. I'm actually working on a couple of different certifications as it relates to the finance and accounting realm. I have a executive coach that I work with on a regular basis. And then from the industry side, we previously worked with Barry McKinley as a way to understand more about the managed services from the multiple standpoint, the structuring of contracts and making sure that we're profitable. And we just recently switched to the Service Leadership Index through ConnectWise. So we're always looking for outside input on what best in class looks like. I know that we've been pioneering the way in some different areas. And so we understand that we're not going to do everything the same way as what the model says, but we want to at least have some ideas of what we're hearing in the market. I think Patrick Layton does an excellent job of meeting with his peers, meeting with those groups to identify areas of opportunity and ways that we can continue to scale and grow. And we all just have that mindset. We want to continue to learn. We're not the best today, but we're striving to be the best.
Well, I think you're all passionate about what you do. It's just really, I can't emphasize it enough. Having this leadership team, all at the age that you guys are is really a remarkable thing. I mean, you got 20 years before anything would ever have to change,
Right.
unless you really screw something up. But Jeff, it's always great talking with you. Is there anything you want to add before we end?
No, I just appreciate the time as always. It's nice to reflect on what we've been doing as an organization. It's great to have an opportunity to sit down with you and hear more about what you're learning in the market. And so I really appreciate it.
Well, everybody that's watching me and now you too knows this: status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there.